What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Dream a Little, the podcast that's all about helping you feel confident about your kink so that you can enjoy it with your significant other. I'm your host, Lo. Thank you so much for listening. Our guest, Ollie, was such a pleasure to chat with, so I think you're going to really enjoy this episode, especially if you're single and or in a new relationship. He was able to not only tell his girlfriend about ABDL, but also get her to the point where she's now disappointed if he's not wearing. And I know it's easy for Ollie and I to look back on our experiences opening up and give advice about telling your partner about ABDL, but the truth is it's going to be different for everyone. Opening up about ABDL is not easy, but there are some things you can do that will increase your chance at successfully introducing ABDL. And more importantly, there are things you should avoid at all costs so you don't mess up this opportunity. So that's what we're going to talk about on today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode and you want to reach out to Ollie and get to know him a little bit better, that would be awesome. You can find all Ollie's contact info in the show notes of this episode at thelittlelounge.com/145. On that same page, you'll also find a preview to my latest Nurturing Mommy roleplay audio. So be sure to check it out. That's thelittlelounge.com/145. All right, I won't make you wait any longer. Let's get started. What's up, Ollie? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Lo. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, same here.
Awesome. Well, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? What do you identify as? Are you a little, big, switch, ABDL? I know there's a lot of acronyms out there.
Yes, definitely. I definitely identify more so as a DL and a little bit of a little. That part kind of varies. Like the older I've gotten and the more adult responsibilities you start to get into, the harder it is to feel a little more little. But my fiance definitely likes to look at me as a little more so.
Oh, okay. So is your fiance also into ABDL? Or did you introduce her to it?
I very much introduced her to it and I'm sure we'll get into this more, but I introduced her to everything and slowly but surely everything kind of fit into place. And now she's very much into it.
Wow. Okay. So judging from what you said, it sounds like she's got somewhat of a mommy side then.
Oh, very heavy mommy side there.
How did you find this girl?
So it was just standard online dating, really, that it was. I wasn't looking for anyone particularly kinky at the time because I've had other experiences where I've tried to find someone kinky and see if you mix that route, but that didn't really work for me because everything became so focused just on the kink side, and I know I need more than that. So I decided that try and work with someone that I know I mesh with and that I get along with, from a personality perspective, and then see if the kink side tends to work out. So we just met online, got to know each other pretty well, and then I told her reasonably early on about this side of me, and then it started to slowly develop over the course of time.
Wow. Okay, so how long have you two been together?
We just celebrated 2 years about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
So what website did you guys meet on, if you don't mind me asking?
OkCupid.
OkCupid. Okay, cool. And when you told her about this, were you nervous?
Definitely. So what I did, and I'm pretty sure this was also taking advice from you at some point. It was I think it was our third date. So it was a few weeks into us talking to each other and knowing each other. I brought over a nice bottle of wine that was one of my favorites. Amount of that myself just to build up the nerves a little bit. And then it was my opportunity to kind of put everything out on the table of just here's everything that makes me me. So that way it's one of those things that if it wasn't going to work out, I'd rather know sooner rather than later. But she was very understanding and was just listening to everything I had to say and seemingly didn't scare her off because she's still here now.
I absolutely love what you said about telling them sooner rather than later. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid. And, it would suck to be, maybe 6 months, a year, or even for some people years into a relationship. And then just then coming out, because then it feels like something you should say early on, right? It's a big part of you.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that you have to be able, if you can't own it yourself and because then it always brings up that question of if you wait that 6 months, a year, such like that, it's the why did you wait so long? Are you ashamed of it? Like, are you trying to hide it? And I know from like I have one kinky friend that I talk to about everything, and then from listening to your podcast and following you on all the social media, it's the like if you can't own it and accept that part of you, then how is someone else going to be able to accept it?
Totally. It comes off as more of a like a flaw or an insecurity than something that you actually accept and are excited about trying to make them to also make them excited to try.
Yeah, if you don't come across as excited and eager to share it, then why should they want to share it with you in the first place?
Right. Wait, well, she was she the first person that you ever opened up to, or have you opened up before to other girls?
I've opened up before, so I had prior to her, I had had like two real relationships prior to that. I had told both of them. The first one didn't go very great, where it was just one of those not into it, let's never talk about it again. And then second one where told her about it, left it alone for a while, kind of came back to it, gave it a try, and inevitably the whole relationship kind of came to an end as a result of it. I mean, there was plenty of other issues on top of that, but in terms of what was one of the real sticking factors, it was the whole ABDL thing. But
Sexual compatibility is huge, right?
oh, it definitely is, and she definitely just couldn't get over the ABDL side of things, and it was influencing how she saw me outside of that, where it was the like I definitely don't consider myself as all ABDL all the time. Like there's definitely a time and a place for it, and when it came to outside of the bedroom and outside of that, she couldn't not see the baby side.
I see. So she just, it kind of changed the way that she looked at you, which is kind of, from what I hear, a lot of ABDL's like worst fears, basically.
Yeah, there's it definitely can happen that way, and but I will also kind of say to touch on that a bit more is that the way I was communicating about it, like probably just the way I introduced in the first place and the way I was addressing it throughout, probably was not the most healthy way. And it's one of those things that I I look back at a lot of the mistakes I make and the way I communicate, and I try and learn from that. So that way, when I went about it this time, I knew exactly what not to do. And I think that's a large reason that it worked out in the first place.
What was the number one thing that you feel like you learned not to do?
I think especially when someone is new to it, it's those of us that have kind of lived with this our whole lives, we get to this point where we know exactly what we want and we like have these fantasies of here's exactly how you want to do things all the time. But if someone is trying out something new, like you kind of have to let them make their own mistakes with it as well. Like they're getting to learn you and the things that you like. And if you just kind of go through and steamroll, no, do this. And especially if you're more submissive and you're trying to teach your significant other who's trying to play that dominant role and you're telling them everything to do, you're not letting them play that role and they're just going to get discouraged.
Right. So maybe just let them kind of learn naturally as they go and maybe not be so critical when someone's going out of their comfort zone to try something new with you.
Exactly. And it definitely doesn't help that I am a giant brat when it comes to any of this in the
Uh-oh.
first place. But it, we all are.
Yeah. Okay, well, I can agree with that. I'm a big brat when I was little at least. Okay, so how are things different with your partner now? What did you do a little bit differently when you like how long did you wait first of all after you told her to before you actually started trying things?
After I first talked to her, I'm trying to think of the exact timeline, but I feel like within a few weeks, it was one of those things just like slowly trying it. So like you wear underclothes and such, but you don't really have much interaction beyond that. And then it was just kind of I know my fiance will say this. I'm constantly checking in with her just to make sure that she's okay with everything we're doing. If there's anything she wants to do, anything I can do differently. So I think that was a huge part of it. So you need to kind of set up different checkpoints, and every time you're thinking about trying something new, that your partner has to be on board with it. Otherwise, I mean, you're really starting to violate their consent at that point. And if you're trying to get them on board with this more out there kink that we start to see it as, then it's a lot harder to get them on board.
Absolutely. Were you wearing underclothes at first then? And did you have her consent to do that? Did she kind of encourage you to do that?
Oh, definitely. And I think a lot of that just kind of goes to how I approached that conversation the first time. And like it took a lot of conscious effort and the little liquid courage to just have that confidence to not show any shame that might be there. That something that I have had issues with in previous relationships, and you want them to be accepting of it, but also you kind of need to be able to go into it of not being so incredibly disappointed if they don't react in the way you want to. So I believe that I got her on board pretty early on, at least. Like, it didn't scare her off to the point that she wanted to stop dating me at that point or anything. But yeah, I just started off like wearing underclothes to start off, and I always checked with her when I wanted to do something else.
Okay, I love that. And I did that a lot too when I was first starting out with my fiance. And I love what you said, just because you're basically getting at, just because even if you feel shame doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be showing it, right? So like, or even if you're
Yeah,
acting like the shame isn't there, it's not necessarily because you don't feel shameful. There are ways to kind of fake it till you make it, kind of, you know?
yeah, it's one of those, like, when you're introducing it, you don't want it to be this incredible source of shame. Like, as your partner gets more involved and gets more comfortable and you start to feel each other out more, you can start talking about where that comes from. But you also don't want to just overload someone from the onset of, here's every single thing that's ever happened to me with my ABDL kink in my entire life, and just that's a little much.
Yeah, it's like word vomit. And I like
Exactly.
I like how you're kind of getting at this other thing too, which is like, let them have their reaction and let that be valid. You know, they not everyone's going to react the way that we all dream of. They're not going to just be like, "Oh, perfect. I love diapers too." You know, like that's probably never
Exactly.
going to be the reaction that someone has. And don't get too tied into like, they bet they need to have this kind of reaction or in order for this conversation to go well, or to mean that we're going to try things. You know, sometimes people initially are like shocked or put off, but they can come around to the idea. And I think that's part of the process. Is I'm sure that your partner had some questions about it, and that's part of the hurdle is trying to get them to like understand what it really is, and more importantly what it's not.
Exactly. And I think a lot of us tend to overlook that, where it's so ingrained in us and so natural to us that there's a lot of these questions that might not occur. And we never had that shock factor experience of, here's something totally new and out there that just never occurred to us before.
Right. Had she ever heard of ABDL before, or worse, has she seen like some of the Jerry Springer episodes, or you know?
No, no. Thankfully, my fiance is not into all those different reality shows and such. So, yeah, I think prior to this was more like very standard vanilla. Like, we haven't gotten really into super kinky play like outside of that, and I feel like I've introduced more of that as the deviant that I am.
Okay. So when you first told her about it, did you tell her more about your DL side? Like when did your little side kind of come out, or when did she try like, you know, having more of a nurturing role in all of this?
I honestly think the nurturing role is the part that just comes more naturally to her, where like she has a lot of like extended family that she helps care for. Like, there's a lot of like younger kids around, and she's always had that instinct to her, where I definitely, from what I remember, I mostly introduced just the DL side to it because that's where everything originated for me. And then I think she just kind of took that and ran with it and started to go more down the nurturing side of things. Because for me, like, the diapers are one thing, and then it's a lot of like that kind of like teasing and playfulness, like not necessarily super strict and mean. And I knew I didn't want that. And she fits the opposite of that perfectly, of just that very nurturing, caring, trying to just look after any and all of your needs. I think similar to how you approach it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I get what you're saying. So how do you get someone involved with just the DL part of things. That's what I'm curious about, since I'm so skewed to like the other side of like regression and being a mommy and stuff. Like I don't know if I could even treat someone who's wearing a diaper like an adult. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and sometimes she's not that capable of that either, and that's where some of the brattiness comes through. I think it definitely is just trying to find that balance of everything where I probably used to wear more than I do now with like my current job. And it's like one of those things that you start to normalize it a bit more. And like she definitely has gotten to the point where when I'm just wearing like normal boxers, like she's visibly upset. Like she's something is not right here. Like she's actually gotten to that point.
Wow. Okay, wait. It's like you awakened the side of her that she didn't even really know existed.
That's kind of how I feel about it sometimes. That I don't think this would have occurred to her naturally, but me introducing it, and like we've definitely talked about this sometimes, but yeah, she just got super into it, and it's incredibly amazing that she has, and I'm thankful for that every day. And I tell her that very often.
Yeah. I mean, how could you not be? This is like one of the best success stories I've heard when it comes to like introducing someone to this kind of kink, because it's definitely not easy. And what's so funny is it seems like maybe it was part of her personality, to be nurturing, and, you know, had you been together, there would probably maybe be more signs about it. But like you told her so early on, and it's like I can't help but think it was obviously like had to do with your confidence, but like part of it was just kind of like you got really lucky too.
Oh, I definitely got really lucky because the only real indicator I had that she had any kind of dominance or mommy kind of streak to her is I don't know what your experience is with like other dating sites and like OkCupid and stuff, but like there's always the different questions that like you can answer by default, so that way someone can look at you and see your answers to these questions and see if you might be a match. And there's the one in there of, all right, like if you're including like ropes in the bedroom, are you being tied up or doing the tying? And I'm the tied up and she's the doing the tying. I'm like, okay, maybe there's something there.
Okay, so there was like a little bit of a hint. Is that how you were like filtering through people on the site? You would just check out that answer, and if it was like if you guys were the both submissive, you're like, no.
I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a factor.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, but even though someone's saying like they like to be doing the tying, that there's a huge difference between tying someone up and putting them in a diaper.
Yes, there very much is. And like, I definitely wasn't going into the conversation thinking like, oh, if she's into tying the rope, then this is going to be easy.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know that no part of it's going to be easy, but I just like your whole mindset about it, about dating, cuz you weren't making it such a big deal by telling her early on, you know? You weren't building it up to be something, this huge thing, even though it is.
It is, but it took those negative experiences to start feeling that way. Of like, I feel like that was the issue I had in the past, where you build it up to be this end all be all. Like it, the more you build it up, the more someone else is going to think that like this is all of who you are, as opposed to just a single aspect of it. And while yes, you want to be accepted for all of you and have someone be able to share in all those things that you do, that if you build this up to be more than it is, that's where it starts to get a little bit of a turnoff for someone that's not into it.
Oh, yeah. And I think that they start to feel like this is the defining thing about you.
Yeah, and that's entirely what it started to feel like, and that's what it was turning into, and that's how my ex felt. At least that's how I think she felt. We haven't talked about this in a very long time, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're running out of time here, but I just had one more question. And that
Okay.
is, as you were introducing things to your partner, and now she's gotten to the point where she's like, sounds like she's a little disappointed when you're not wearing a diaper. Like, how do you
Mhm.
get to that comfort point? Like, okay, so we went from you're like wearing underclothes around her. And then I'm just wondering, like, how long until you felt super comfortable with it, or were there any like awkward points?
There definitely were, like, as you kind of get to each new stage, because like you're trying to introduce it little by little, because if you open up the floodgates, that also tends to scare people off a bit.
Yeah.
But I think kind of as you start to touch on each new piece of it, that there's some growing pains there, and you're both feeling each other out, where and that's why I'm constantly trying to check in. Any new thing either I have an idea, or I read something, or I saw something, it's just being able to check in and be like, okay, here's what I'm thinking, here's why I'm thinking this. It's providing a lot of context to it. And then it was just kind of a lot of experience and getting her more and more used to everything. And then I think once she started getting used to it and getting the hang of it, she saw how much more relieved it was making me feel, and more accepted that I was feeling. And you both start feeling a lot better, because you're sharing in this together, and that's making you closer.
Absolutely. And I don't want to ask like too much information here, but like I feel like a lot of people are probably going to be thinking it of like, how do you get over the hurdle of like the sanitary issue of like actually using a diaper in front of someone and having them like interact with you in that? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, to a degree. And I like, I think the straight answer is like, you kind of have to accept being like a little bit of a perv yourself, and that because that's where a lot of the discomfort's going to be. Like, if you are showing that degree of like embarrassment and discomfort, like, because your partner's going to start to base their expression and how they react based off of whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not saying like you're trying to go and like show it off and make it this huge big deal. Like, you just, like, if you act like it's a normal thing, they're going to treat it like it's a normal thing.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. It's like the same thing when you're having the conversation and you're being confident. I mean, yeah, we're not talking about like strutting around and being like, hey, check this out. It's so cool. It's so sexy. Like, obviously, you don't have to go that far, but there's like a middle ground of like not making it a huge deal and just letting it happen, I guess, and talking about it obviously first.
Yeah, like, you don't want to catch them so incredibly off guard. Like, you want to have the conversation first, and then like it'll inevitably turn into that you've gotten used to each other so much that you could just start strutting around and showing off if you wanted to.
Oh yeah, me and my boy are like that now too. I mean, we do the most embarrassing things together. Of course, but like, you got to talk about it first, especially with someone who's not ABDL themselves.
Oh my God, you have to, even though it can be the most painfully awkward conversation, because like there's one, especially when it comes to those kind of conversations, you want to beat around the bush a little bit, but
you can't.
There isn't really a way to say it other than just get to the point. And the faster you say it, the faster it's done. You
can't talk in code here, okay? You just gotta spit it out.
And you really don't want a miscommunication there.
No. You want to be very clear about what's happening. And you're right. Like, once you get past that hurdle of talking about it, which I think is actually probably the biggest part of it, you know, you feel more bonded, and like you can honestly tell that person anything after you talk to them about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you definitely can. And I know, like, I have one of my best friends that I like, that we started off knowing each other through kink, and it like evolves from there. Is like, you're like confidant that you tell everything, and just having someone else there to kind of like be your cheerleader a bit and help you feel more confident in yourself and feel better about that. Like, just having that kinky support group.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I feel like not a lot of people have that, but I feel like a lot of people are also in hiding and not really reaching out and making those connections with people. I know I wasn't before I had this podcast, or before I told my fiance about ABGL. I was always like a lurker, and I totally can see how like having a friend group, or even just a friend who's also kinky, not even necessarily ABGL, could, you know, help you just feel more accepted and be that kinky cheerleader in your life, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that one person that I can talk to about everything, and I'm definitely like you used to be, where I'm like that lurker, just kind of on the outside of things, and like I see everything that's going on, but it's even if it feels difficult to like reach out to someone in the first place and you might not be successful for a while, like it shouldn't discourage you from continuing to reach out, because it does feel so validating when you have someone that you can actually talk to about this.
Yeah, and just feel understood.
Yes.
Can't be undervalued. It really can't. Well,
not at all.
Ollie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really enjoyed getting to know you and hearing all your stories. And I'm going to wish you and your partner the best of luck. Sounds like things are going really well.
Yes, they are. Thank you so much, Lo. It was a blast.
Yeah, of course. Well, we'll be in touch.
All right, bye.
Bye.